What should you look for when you watch other people's animation? What can you take away from the work of legendary animators to get inspired for your own work? And how do you find your own voice and style as an animation artist? In this interview, I'm talking to animation historian and Oscar winner John Canemaker. The interview was recorded at the FMX 2019 before the pandemic, so that's why we're sitting so close together and are not wearing masks. You analyzed animation done by legendary masters. And I wonder, how do you approach such an analysis? What do you look for in an animation?
Well, I think looking for basically how they take the mechanics and the principles of animation and turn it into something that expresses an individuality, a personality, and where that comes into it. I'm always fascinated by that transition from just the mechanics of motion to something that affects an audience emotionally.
Yeah.
So,
it's kind of a big step that there's like a mechanical side of things, like
stretch and squash is all of these things are follow through, arcing, overlapping action, exaggeration, staging, all of the things that were codified by the Disney studio based on the early improvisational work of Winsor McCay is something that is fascinating to see how it comes together from the mechanics into the emotions.
Yeah. What do you think is the secret? Like, what makes it become more than just motion?
I think the personal involvement of the animator is very, very important. The old saying, walk a mile in my shoes, you'll know what my life is like. So I think animators have to not only have that vocabulary, Grim Natwick called it a vocabulary. It's, A, B, C, D in terms of how you can use the mechanics to bring out a personality and then find a way to convince yourself. Disney's animators used to call it sincere animation, where you sincerely feel what the character is feeling as the animator, and you try to invest that emotion into the characters through the drawings, through the puppets, through the pixels. So it's a difficult thing, but interestingly enough, the principles and trying to immerse yourself is the same for all of those different media. So it's very useful.
Yeah, really fascinating. Do you have some examples of great legendary animators where you can see their personality in their work, or how their personal history influenced their animation?
Well, I think because I've studied the animators, and a lot about them as well, that you can pick out, say, a Ward Kimball scene or a Frank Thomas scene or such. But there are certain things within the hand-drawn, animation that are particular to those animators. I mentioned in the talk on Vladimir Teitla that he was known for doing these giant, powerful, bombastic characters, such as Stromboli or the Devil on Bald Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
But he was also sensitive enough to be able to do the little elephant Dumbo.
Yeah.
So that's one example, but we know his scenes and all of that. But there would be something quite dynamic when his stuff hits the screen.
Yeah.
It hits you as well in terms of your emotions. Fear or horror or tenderness, all of that sort of thing. He's really a marvelous actor.
Yeah. So how do you think should animators, what can they do to find their voice or to find their specialty? Is that something that they should be looking for?
No, I don't think so. I think as a student, you should try as many different things as possible.
Yes.
But certainly experiment and look at the principles and see how can I, apply these things. Frank Thomas was one of my mentors, and I had the privilege of being friends with he and Ollie Johnston. And I would send them films, and they would give me tough love critiques. And we had a wonderful relationship for many years. I also was a good friend of Chuck Jones for about 30 years, and he influenced my thinking about animation and how it was done. But I think don't be concerned about a style, and certainly don't imitate a style, a Disney style. Come up with your own way of doing things with your graphic abilities.
Yes.
But see what happens when you apply some of the principles to it, and apply that sensibility of, I am a squirrel, I am a rabbit, I am a robot, I am whatever it is you're trying to be. Try to get into that sensibility, and if you can figure out how you would do it if you were that character, it's going to read some veracity, some truth to the audience.
Yeah. And do you think this truth, this authenticity, is the difference between good and bad animation?
Well, it could be. It's always good to find a truthful way of getting to people's sensibilities and emotions and such.
To get back to analyzing the animations by legends, by great masters, are there any discoveries that stand out to you where you thought like, that's interesting?
Mm-hmm. Well, I do teach a course at NYU on action analysis.
Yes.
And it comes after they do Action Analysis 1, which is the principles of animation. But here in my class, they do apply it to personality animation. And we study live action.
Okay.
And that is what the Disney masters did as well.
Mm-hmm.
They went from reality. And,
yes.
They caricatured reality. They made it into the illusion of life, as Frank and Ali labeled it. So it's a very interesting course because we look at different aspects of professional performers, who are giving sometimes great performances, and we're trying to figure out how they did it and what they're doing to communicate it, and how do you stage an action. So we look at it from the actor's ability. There's one class that I do called Young and Old, and I take, because of YouTube is so great.
Yeah,
it's so great. There's so much there. It's a treasure trove to study.
Yes.
You can take a performer, say Fred Astaire, the great dancer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we will look at him dancing with Ginger Rogers in Swing Time, and they do a dance about her teaching him how to dance.
Okay.
Is the motivation. So we look at that and we notice that the way they're dancing, we see the principles there quite obviously. Yes. Anticipation, stretch and squash, the different shapes that they make, the follow through of the dress and the tails of his coat, things like that. But then we also notice the acting that goes into it. They're not just dancing. They're dancing for a purpose. She has to prove to her boss that she can teach dancing.
So what is it that we as newcomers to animation can and should learn from animation history?
Well, I think you can have an inspiration from animation history, how it was done in different periods, might inspire you in terms of what you want to do with your own films. I know that I saw Winsor McCay's work when I was a teenager because of the Disneyland television show. And it showed him interacting with the character and the emotions that the character had. The first, really amazing masterpiece of personality animation. But then so many animators who followed McKay were inspired by him, by his work. And I can still see it happening today. When I showed Gertie the other day here, the reaction, having the audience react to that was quite wonderful. I love that. It's like you're back in 1914 and, experiencing these things. But I think you should study as many parts of the animation history as possible. I love the films of Oscar Fischinger. They are abstract. They don't have, personality, but they're not supposed to. But his way of moving these symbols and these designs is fascinating. His use of color, all of that, the syncing up with the music that he did. There's something there that appeals. Why does it appeal? What is it that it is? Is it the movement? Is it the color? It informs you. It nourishes your imagination. That's what it does. The Hubleys, John and Faith Hubley, inspired me by the films that they did because of the painterly quality that they brought to them, and the sort of free form, almost pencil test design of the Moonbird and Windy Day and films like that, and the fact that they used real voices, spontaneous improvisational voices. Their children, Dizzy Gillespie, Maureen Stapleton, actors who improvised the soundtrack and had that wonderful spark of spontaneity that they then animated too. So their animation became a comment on the voices. So I've used that in a number of my personal films, and the one about my father that I did, The Moon and the Sun, has a track that was based on a tape recording that I did of him, so the actual dialogue came from that. Then I gave it to two actors to do, but it still was from a spontaneous quality. So that, Chuck Jones is another person to study. We were talking about the minimalism that he has, where the eye might just move slightly, or an eyebrow or something like that, but it has a world of meaning to him. He's a very precise animator. In my action analysis class, I bring in some layouts that Chuck gave me from one of the Roadrunner cartoons, and it shows how he controlled the direction of these by he did about 12 sketches for a very short little piece of one of the films in which the coyote turns himself into a bow and arrow.
Oh, yeah.
He actually does do that. But to see how he figured out where to place the weight on the character, the fact that, he has the character look at the camera and communicate directly with the audience, and then is undone, each time, trying to catch the Roadrunner. But it's great in terms of the timing. All of these things kind of, you admire it, and then you maybe try to apply it to your own work and experiment.
Yeah. Timing is a thing that always fascinates me in the old classic traditional animation, because, they had pencil tests and all this, but to the point where you could see the animation, you already animated a lot. And in a way, not in a way, nowadays things are a lot easier. You can immediately test your timing. You can just press that play button.
Well, Vladimir Titla said that was the thing that amazed him about coming to the Disney studio in 1934. Before that, he was working in New York at the Terrytoon studio, and the animators never saw their work as a test. They would see it on the screen when it opened with the film, the feature films. So he said when they came to Disney, they were testing everything. Every day they would do, these little white lines on black, would be the reverse, just the negative. But you could see the movement.
Yes.
And then you could change it. And then you could improve it,
Yeah. Sounds kind of important. If you're just surprised by how the result is.
Yeah.
Those people were good. They probably knew a lot of stuff.
Some did. Titla was kind of an exception because he studied, in Europe. He came to Europe and studied sculpture with Charles Despio in Paris. Yeah. He went around to other countries and saw galleries and museums and was inspired by the paintings there, Bruegel and such. And so his thinking went into, say, the dwarfs in Snow White. So there's a Bruegel quality to them, and and the acting as well. They went to plays, they went to movies. Disney also brought that to the studio as well. So I would say trying to go from reality and seeing what you can take from it, and then go from great performances, go to the theater, in fact, become an actor yourself for a while. Get up and go to acting classes or join local theatrical, clubs and just have that experience of physically communicating with the audience. How does it feel? How does it feel when you're not able to communicate? How does it feel when you miscommunicate?
Yeah.
All of that stuff, you can put that into your work,
Yeah.
from personal knowledge.
That's amazing. Yeah. Actually, I was just thinking about that the other day after your talk, when you talked about how Tyler found inspiration and that, like, even if it's not art, even if it's just a hobby, sometimes that finds its way into your work. For example, I was practicing magic tricks, card tricks for a while, and the way how in card tricks is usually misdirection, but the way you direct attention, you can use that in animation.
Absolutely. Well, in the McKay lecture,
Yes.
he didn't know how to get Gertie the dinosaur to stand up after he had gotten her down, and she's resting and breathing and all that sort of thing. I thought, now, how am I going to get her up, because her legs are crossed in the back and she's huge, and I don't know about this, because I know this because he distracts you like a magician. Like you said, he says, don't look over here at Gertie. Now, he brings a flying dragon in up here. And so I told the audience the other night, I said, don't look at the dragon, but keep looking down here. And sure enough, he moves her when the dragon starts to come across, and you're doing this, and dust comes up.
Yeah.
And it disguises how the legs are going to move to get up. So it was really a classic, magician's trick.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's ultimately, it just has to work. It has to feel right. And if it's feel right, you got away with it. Do you have other examples like that?
Let's see. Well, I did, you saw in the Milton Call thing where Jiminy Cricket is running to work. He's late, being the conscience of Pinocchio. So he has to get dressed as he's running.
Amazing animation.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Scene. Really a masterpiece of invention, of control, and just a personality thing. The acting too. He's frantic trying to get to work and get dressed at the same time. So there's at least one point where he has to hinge the umbrella on his arm. So we looked at the drawings frame by frame, and sure enough, a knee comes up in front of where the umbrella is supposed to go. In the next drawing, it's there, hooked onto the arm. So again, it's being like a magician of sorts.
Yeah. I mean, animation is a little bit like magic, so sometimes you can play tricks. If you were a young animator starting out now, wanting to learn animation, how would you go about that? How would you start?
Well, when I started in the 50s, there was no film academy.
Yeah.
There was no CalArts. There was no NYU animation program. I learned rudiments of animation from television, from the Disneyland TV show in the 1950s, in which Uncle Walt Disney would demonstrate. Sometimes he had an entire show on the history of animation, which also put in my mind about maybe I'd like to look into this history thing more. But it also, he showed the techniques.
Yeah.
He showed how they actually animated them. And he had several shows on that with the masters. Frank Thomas did a show on Lady and the Tramp. And, there were a number of those sort of things. He explained the multiplane camera, how that worked. He showed cells being painted. It was a little tutorial. It was like what we have on YouTube today. But it was a national television show. And also on television was Walter Lantz, who had the Woody Woodpecker show.
Oh, yeah.
And he had several sections in which he said, Woody, tell us and show us how this is done. And Woody Woodpecker would demonstrate animation, voices, how they were done. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. So I started making my own flip books and stuff. So today, there's, a treasure trove of places, particularly YouTube, that you can study for yourself. There's tutorials on there. There's great animators explaining how they do their work. There's special effects people showing how they do stuff. Yeah. And the history of animation can be put together basically from just looking at YouTube and some of the other specialty places. So I think you can self-educate yourself. In the meantime, there were really only a couple of books back in the 50s.
Yeah.
There was Preston Blair's book, which still has its value and its uses. There was a 1942 book called The Art of Walt Disney. which was one of the first scholarly books and a how-to book in a way of Disney animation. So there's a lot of books out there now.
Yeah.
I've written a few of them, but there's so many more of all different kinds of animation and all different biographies, all different kinds of histories of studios. There's a wonderful book on UPA that has been published called When Magoo Flew. It's a great book, and there's just a lot of material out there. So in many ways, you can self-educate yourself, but you could also start doing animation. Just do it.
Yeah.
You can take classes in drawing. You can, they still draw at Pixar. They work out their thumbnails and stuff by drawing. Communication is basically through drawing, and then it goes into, the computer form. But there's so much that you can do on your own. And then if you can get someone, a mentor, or to go to a school where they actually formally teach it, then you get even more blessing.
Yeah.
But there's nothing stopping you from learning on your own. And in fact, it doesn't cost much to do a film in the first stages. The first stages are pretty much free because you have your idea. You can write that down. You can do a script by yourself. You can do your concept drawings. You can do storyboards. You can do thumbnails. You can do layouts, all before you get to, and you can do the animation yourself if you want to. But then, when it gets the time to be scanned and to be composited or, to work with expensive computer equipment, then that's where the budget gets a little bit fatter. But the beginning part, which to me is the most exciting part because it's the most creative and conceptual, that's stuff that's free.
Yeah.
And you can do that. Don't do it. Don't just sit here.
Just go start animating today. Wonderful. Yeah, I think I can't add anything to that. Thank you so very much for this conversation.
Great pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you.
If you want to listen to what experts and industry veterans have to say about animation and VFX, you might want to check out this year's FMX. It's completely online, so you can participate no matter where you are in the world. You can get your ticket right now on fmx.de. It's starting May 4th, 2021. So check that out on fmx.de. And in the meantime, keep on animating, start working on your own animation film. Go, go, go!